Okay, my clock says it's time to start. Welcome. Thank you for coming. And we are going to be talking about what to do right now in January for your garden for the rest of this year. Now, this is not everything we're going to do. They're just some highlights that we can do right now to get our gardens started. So that should be fun. But I've got to give you a quick update on the last couple of weeks because we didn't meet last week. We had boot camp and it was a raving success. I had 9 people here and it was just about the perfect number. I kind of say 15 is my max number, but it was really good this time. And I changed my curriculum just a little bit. I changed it so that the first day we went through all our slides, and then the second day we were in the greenhouse the entire day. Now you got to realize we have a lot of snow on the ground and it's cold outside, so the outdoor activities that we do when it's not when it's not winter, we did it all in the greenhouse, because in the summer, the spring, we do activities outside, but there was nothing to do outside because it was freezing cold outside and snow and everything else. So we did everything in the greenhouse, and it seems like the people really loved it. I had them fill out a paper when they left, and everybody left good reviews, so that's a good thing. Every other boot camp I've ever done, which hasn't been many, I've always had feedback that that helped me be better, and this and then I always have thoughts as I'm doing it. Oh man, I should have done this, or oh, I should have done that. And so I make notes between classes and after in the evenings during boot camp of what I could put in another one. So I did that to this one, and it was great. I got through the entire boot camp with no good ideas of how to make it better. So that made me excited. And then when I read everybody's thing that they wrote, people had suggestions of what they would want, but there was nothing that I felt like we could have really done a lot better. There were some great suggestions because we had brilliant people. But so I think it was really successful and awesome and great. And I just want to make it known to the public. I mean, everybody knows this, but I want to make it known that if you have already been to boot camp, when you come back again, there is a discount. So just so everybody knows that, I'm saying that right now. Let's go ahead and get started with our instruction for tonight. So gardening in January, what do we do? So I have a to-do list here, and then let me see my next slide. Oh yeah. That's funny. Watch this. Okay, everybody just close your eyes for a second while I delete this right here. Ha! See that? Yeah, now I'm prepared. I finally got my slides built. Thank you very much. So gardening in okay. At least I can laugh at my own jokes. Gardening in January. These are things that I do at this time of year. Now, you may need to do other things in your own garden and in your climate, but in my garden, for the context of where I live, the greenhouse that I have, the climate that I have, the foods that I eat, here's what I do in January. I work on compost. So sometimes it can be hard to gather compost materials in the winter. So I don't really gather compost materials, but I have a big pile of them. So during the winter, I make compost. So I have compost being made right now. And so since I have more time in the winter than the summer, I'm able to create compost. Now, compost is one of the most important tools, and we need to have an entire class just on compost as a tool, not how to make it, but how to use it. So we're not going to really talk about that tonight, but I do make compost in the winter time. And then wintertime is the time to take classes, watch videos, and get education. We always need to do further education. I love to listen to webinars and podcasts from some of the greatest soil scientists out there. And so that's what I try to do so that we can further learn. I've been listening to an LDS scholar recently, Hugh Nibley, and he generally most of the things that are recorded that he talks about are religious in nature, but he has a lot of things that have to do with ecology. So I've been listening to him, and I've been learning a lot of how man deals with the earth, and man's role on earth as a steward. So it's pretty fascinating what I've been learning there. So earthworm compost, the winter's a great time to start a worm bin, a worm farm, a worm compost, whatever you want to call it is fine. But I love to start earthworm compost in the winter. If I'm going to start a new worm bed, wintertime's a good time to do it because you have time to mess with them. You have time to do things in the winter time. Now, maybe you don't, but for my lifestyle, I do. So starting an earthworm compost would be a perfect thing to do. And then I always order my seeds in. Usually I try to order them in the fall, late fall, early winter, like November. And I do have all my seeds pretty much for this year. Sometimes I'm always thinking, because sometimes I'll get a new seed catalog, I don't know, somebody will have a new something I want to try. But for the staples and the main things, if I'm going to order seed for something, I try to get it done early. So right now, January is kind of the latest time to order seeds. You want to order early. So if you haven't done it yet, get your seed order done. Write down your garden plan. The plan is pretty important of what you're going to be doing for the next, for 2023, for the next many months, all summer. But you need to get it written. Excuse me. You need to get it written down so you know exactly what you're doing. You need to have it planned out. Now, if you have a greenhouse, it's not too late to plant garlic and shallots, but only if you have a greenhouse. If you're trying to plant garlic and shallots right now in like just outside, it probably won't work very good. You want to plant those normally in September or October in most of North America, but I have found that planting as late as the end of January in a greenhouse, you can still get that done. We actually practiced planting garlic and shallots in the greenhouse here this last week during boot camp, which was pretty great. So we can watch that. Those of you who are on Patreon will be able to have updates and see those video updates throughout the next year and see how the ones we planted now compare to the ones that I planted early. Because, I mean, we've been eating shallot greens that are 6 to 8 inches long, meaning the leaves, like onion chives, I've been picking those and eating them. So they've been growing for a long time. And a lot of my garlic in the greenhouse is anywhere from 2 to 3 inches tall. Some of it is about 6 to 8 inches tall, but most of it was planted a few weeks later, so it's a little bit shorter. So things are certainly growing in the greenhouse right now. The other thing is, if you have greenhouses, now's a good time to get your compost out and make up an extract and inoculate the greenhouse. And that's super simple to do. You just mix the compost into a bucket and mix it up real good, and then you just spread that liquid around your growing beds. Remember that when you do that, it's for the soil. You're not necessarily putting that on the leaves of the plants, although you could and it wouldn't hurt them. But the purpose of an extract is to go on the ground. And then plant peas. It's time to plant. If you have a greenhouse, it's time to plant peas and onions. So go ahead and get that planting done. Now, depending on where you are, it may be a little early, but it's not too late anywhere in North America for sure. Even in the South, where you don't even have to have a greenhouse, it's time to plant your plant peas and onions. So right now is probably when Dixondale Farms is planting their hundreds of acres of the onions and then they'll harvest them as little tiny plants in March and April and send them all over. In fact, they may have already planted them. I don't know what their planting schedules are, but they're that way down there in Texas where it's warm, and so they do a lot of they do mostly onions, but they'll have leeks and a few other things you can buy from them. But it is time to plant. If you haven't got your peas in yet in your greenhouse, you're not too late. if you're north, like if you're, if you're anywhere in the super cold north, you may not even want to do that till, into February. But it is time. So there's time to get this done. So these are the things that I do. Now let's talk about foods. So the foods that I like to eat in the wintertime are divided into two groups. There's the foods that we should have fresh right now from the greenhouse, and then there's the foods that we have stored in the root cellar, or whatever your storage situation is. Maybe you have a walk-in cooler. My potatoes are all in a walk-in cooler this year instead of the root cellar, but our root cellar is pretty awesome, so I could have used it. We just didn't. So the fresh foods that you should be able to have at this time of year: microgreens, you can grow those 12 months a year. Kale, you can grow that 12 months a year. And you don't even have to have a greenhouse for some of this. I was talking to my son the other day, and he said, man, we have a couple of kale plants out here that are just fine under the snow. I wish I would have grown more of it, which was pretty fun. Lettuce, spinach, green onions, shallot greens, beets, chard. There's probably some other things. I just threw this slide together a little while ago, getting ready for this free presentation, and this is just what was on the top of my head. But let me tell you, in my greenhouse right now, I have a couple of cabbages that have been wintering over, and we could pick those any day and eat them, and that'd be awesome. I have broccoli right now out there. We already cut the big heads, but I didn't pull the plants out. So very slowly throughout this winter, side shoots have been growing. And so there are broccoli in my greenhouse we could eat. And I have one cauliflower left over from last fall, and it's had some frost damage to it. So I don't know how good it would be to eat. But I'm telling you this because if we would have grown a lot of that stuff and then protected it a little bit from the frost, maybe with a string of lights that get a little bit warm under some row covers, we could have probably had a lot more food than we do now if we wanted it. And then, of course, the stored foods, you can see this list here: potatoes, garlic, onions, shallots, cabbages, apples, and then anything that you dehydrate or bottle. My wife and kids tricked me this year for Christmas, and they bought me a freeze dryer. Totally shocked and confused and thrilled when I got the freeze dryer. I mean, I helped the FedEx guy unload it off the semi in like October, maybe, or November. And I thought it was the neighbors. Oh, they thoroughly tricked me. So that was a pretty fun surprise for Christmas. And so now we have the opportunity to freeze dry food, but we have been freeze drying a few things. Nothing I've grown yet, but we had a bunch of apples, and we got some bananas that were on sale, gonna go bad, and got them super cheap. So it's been fun to play with the freeze dryer. So these are things that we can do in the middle of the winter time to keep our gardens going good. And of course, as you're growing plants each month, because I plant once a month, so you're planting seeds, you're pulling those little plugs out, and you're putting them in the greenhouse as you harvest other things. So we always need some foods or plants that turn into food to put in the soil as soon as we harvest something and we have bare ground. So at this time of year, I do have quite a bit of bare ground in the greenhouse, more than I would like, because where the tomatoes and peppers were, they're just what isn't, I mean, I don't know what to grow there, because if I plant the entire thing to lettuce and spinach, I'll have so much lettuce and spinach I won't know what to do with it. And I don't really have a business selling food, and I don't really want to like pursue that business, or I'd be building 10 more greenhouses or whatever. And that's not the trajectory of my life. So I'm just letting a couple of those places go dormant. But I knew that bare soil is not the best thing, because you don't have the living root in the soil for the microbes. So what have I been doing with that area? That's where I've been making my compost this winter. So that is, it's a use of the space, and it's going to add tons of nutrients. So, I mean, it was maybe not the perfect thing to do, But within my context, I made that choice, and it's certainly not going to hurt anything. It didn't hurt any of the ecological processes to do my compost there. I had to do it somewhere. So that's the way we did it. That is the end of our presentation today. Let me see what my next slide is. Yeah, let's just open this up to questions. And if you have questions, you can unmute yourself or you can type it in here. And anyway.
Hey, William?
Yes.
How do you keep garlic from drying out? Where do you store your garlic to keep it from drying out?
Yeah, good question. So I harvest the garlic once the tops of the garlic go completely dead. You don't want to pick it while it's still green. It needs to be dead. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of green in the leaves when you harvest it, but I dig that up and then I set it out to dry just on a table in the greenhouse for maybe 2 or 3 weeks until the tops completely wither away. And then you can grab the whole garlic with your hands and just kind of squish it, and the tops should come off. That dried up leaf coming out of the ground, it should just crumble away and be gone. And that's when you know it's going to store for a while. And then I just put it in a bag that will breathe air through it. So I'll put maybe 50 to 100 bulbs of garlic in just a mesh bag. And then I hang it up in the garage or the kitchen or the root cellar or wherever. It just needs to be dry. You don't ever want it to be wet. Now, garlic probably only lasts in storage like that for, I don't know, maybe 6 months tops. So it doesn't last forever. But that's how I do it. Did that help?
Yes, I was just wondering, that's the thing. I guess it only lasts 6 months, then it really starting to dry out.
Yeah, you need to eat it pretty quick. So
can you rehydrate garlic when it's dried out like that?
I've never tried it. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder. I bet you could. Might not be as good. Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
You bet. Okay, any other questions tonight?
Go ahead.
So how long does it take to grow garlic?
So garlic takes forever. Garlic's one of the longest crops there is. I usually plant it in September in my climate. In northern Utah, you can probably get away with it. Like in the valleys, probably, October. But you got to get it in the ground, and it needs to sprout roots before the freezing weather comes and freezes the ground. So September, early October is when we plant it. And then we harvest it in June or July. So it grows for a long time. It grows all winter long. And if you grow it in the springtime, it just doesn't do well. It doesn't produce a bulb. So it's one of the most hardy plants there is.
Oh.
You can grow it in probably everywhere, all across Alaska and Canada, I suppose. It's extremely hardy. You just have to plant it, about 4 to 6 weeks before you plan on your ground freezing.
So that could be in September.
Yeah.
There where you are, whether you're in Missouri or in northern Utah, because I know you're in both places, you would want to plant it in probably September is probably the best. That way you get a good root system.
So we have a growing wild in Missouri.
No, we don't. I planted them. Oh yeah, we do have wild garlic, onions, whatever. I want to know, you said we could plant garlic now. So
if you have a greenhouse, have a greenhouse.
Okay. And then in the spring, how long would you wait until you harvest it if you plant it in the spring?
Like the garlic I just planted now.
Yeah.
So it's going to ripen at the same time as the garlic that I planted in the fall. But it'll be interesting to see if the bulbs get as big. They probably.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
Good information.
Yeah, good information.
All right, good. So I got this slide up here. It's showing the dates for my spring boot camp. everybody should plan on coming. As soon as I get between 10 and 15 people, I close it. So we have personal time to work on your garden when you come here. And I think if we had 20 people, I couldn't do it. It's just too much, you know. So we get some one-on-one attention. We don't really it's not like you sit down with me one-on-one. We do everything as a group, but it works out good to have a smaller group. That way everybody can get their questions answered. Super fun stuff. Ezekiel or Helena, do you guys have any questions tonight?
Hey, I was actually wondering why you don't save all your seeds. Why do you still buy seeds?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So I like to try new varieties all the time that I don't have. That's the main reason I buy seeds. And then there are some certain hybrid corn seeds that I keep buying every year so that it will produce seed in my climate, because I am doing my breeding project for the corn, but it's not where it needs to be yet. I don't have enough corn to grow in my short growing season. So like last year I had, I don't know, I probably would have had 100 ears of corn if I would have picked it, but I wanted it to go ahead and ripen so I could tell what the genetics were for sure. And I ended up only saving about 15 or 20 ears from that breeding project that I'm doing to propagate the next next year's. So a lot of the things, yeah, I save seed, but I'm not in my seed saving journey far enough yet, meaning enough years that I have really superb crops. So there's a lot of varieties that are producing more food for me. And my number one goal is to produce enough food to feed 20 people here. So that's why I'm buying seed. And I would actually tell everybody else to do the same thing, because if you're just going to try to grow your own seed, and you're going to starve to death in the 10 years that you're trying to breed plants for your own climate if you're not buying them.
William, you talked about growing in greenhouses. What about growing things in gallon water or milk jugs? You know, the winter gardening stuff, you can plant your seeds now in those. And I mean, if we don't have a greenhouse, would that substitute?
No, because your ground's still going to freeze.
No,
you don't have a big enough mass underneath the whatever you're protecting it with. And so the ground will still be frozen. The benefit to a big greenhouse is the ground never freezes. So you actually have created a completely different climate than outside your greenhouse. Generally speaking, the one greenhouse structure, one roof, puts you in a growing zone 500 miles to the south of wherever you are.
What I was talking about was putting dirt in the bottom of your containers, milk containers, and then you put the seeds in, and it creates like a greenhouse, winter gardening.
And do it in a house.
And you keep them, no, you leave them outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, you leave them outside by the house or wherever. And you make sure that they have some moisture in them. You don't want them to dry out, but you slit it on the side. And so that's a top that lifts up, and you put your seeds in, and then you tape the side closed. And then in the spring, when you can transplant everything that's in that to your outside. It's kind of like a mini greenhouse.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
I guess that would work the same, similar.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should try that and keep us updated on how that goes.
Okay.
It'd be a cool and a fun experiment.
They call it winter gardening. There's a lot of people that do it online now. I mean, a lot of people online who talk about it.
Right. Yeah. So
Okay.
you're going to have plants that can stay alive when they're freezing at night, because it's going to get cold. So you would want to limit it to probably kale and spinach.
Peas. My turn.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want to start your peas yet now, though, in northern Utah, because even if they did take off and grow, they're a really big plant, and so they're not going to be doing much.
Right.
I mean, they have nowhere to grow. So Normally, the reason you would do that is to start your plants and get maybe 3 to 6 weeks jump start on the springtime, and then you would be, so you're not actually eating the food from those, but it's speeding up your, your gardening. So, where you are in
Okay.
northern Utah, your planting date is somewhere in the middle of April to the 1st of May. And so you're only going to want to go probably 6 weeks before that to start something like that.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet. All right. Any more questions tonight? I'm going to take that as a no. Thank you for being on. And we will go ahead and end this unless you have another question. I do have time to take more questions. But thank you for being here. We will post this on my YouTube channel so that other people can see this. My YouTube posts for these have been around between 20 and 30 people are watching these pretty much consistently every week. So that's good. Hopefully it's helping people. I do have a comment in the chat. And it is Helena saying thank you. Thank you too. I appreciate you guys for being here, and hopefully this is helping you guys have the very best garden of your entire lives. And good night.
William, before you go, would you tell us the name of that Utah seed company that you like so much? Again?
Truly Market.
Truly?
What, unless you're talking about Utah Seed. There's a
That's
place
it.
called Utah Seed.
Okay, and what was the other one then?
What kind of seed are you looking for?
Oh, just garden seeds.
Okay, Utah Seed does not have garden seeds. They have cover
Oh.
crop seeds. So
Okay.
True Leaf Market is what you're talking about.
Okay.
And they're right downtown Salt Lake City.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
True Leaf, like true
Oh,
and
true leaf. Okay.
leaf, like, yeah, a leaf, a garden leaf, a plant leaf. True as
Okay.
in the opposite of false. True
Sure.
Leaf Market.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.